Alrighty, everybody, let's get a game in this morning. It is bright and early. I've got a few minutes before I got to kick over to work mode, so let's just see how it goes, right? Let's see what we can get in, what kind of games we can get in today. Looks like we're going to try a Queen's Gambit. No, my opponent's going to go for some kind of... I think this is one of the Indian games. Nimzo Indian, maybe. I'm not certain. I don't know these too well. So I'm gonna pretend this is an early, like a weird Slav kind of thing, where my opponent's looking for a b5 push. So an early a4 takes away the b5 square. Now I have this unfortunate backwards pawn. Let's get the rest of our pieces developed. Let's get our king side going, huh? This is an interesting pawn structure my opponent's got here. Very, very interesting. So now we're all castled. We're all developed. The next question is, what the hell are we gonna do next? Maybe a boring move like this. Oh, interesting. So yeah, a boring move like this. No, because we're not really going to capture anything, because my opponent's rook is going to be on the open file. So let us... There's 3 on that square. There's 3 there. I don't really have anything, guys. My opponent's got a crazy defensive structure here. Look at this. Look at that defensive structure. Feel like I kind of want to start breaking through here, but I don't know how. Not sure. All right, so now the question is, what happens if we capture? My opponent's got 3 options to capture back. But I am gonna sneak my knight up here. He captures here with check. I capture here with my bishop. I'm opening up a line here. Is that good or bad? I don't know. It's definitely something I'm looking at. I'll go ahead and make another trade. So both of us are left with a bishop pair. So my next tactic is this. It's an undefended bishop, so I'm going to try to attack it. Opponent has 2 defenders, I have 2 attackers, so I would need to figure out how to get another attacker on there, and I'm really not interested in it right now. So it's really not a fork. So captures a pawn, captures a pawn. We trade bishops. I'm up the pawn? No, we trade pawns. Okay. I cannot capture because the queen's hanging. What happens if I push the pawn now? What does that do? If I push this pawn now, my opponent would have to redirect the bishop back this way, and that lets me pick up this pawn for free. And defend at the same time? It's an option. My opponent pushes here. I'm going to go ahead and make this trade. This is a tight game. Not sure. Now my queen is undefended, so I really have to be careful of this alignment. So yeah, I said I'm going to go ahead and make this trade. Just like that. All right, so first things first, let's go ahead and take here. If my opponent captures with the rook, putting my queen in jeopardy, I'm just going to slide my queen over onto this square, c3. And that will give me this alignment, which will allow me to have more pressure on that bishop. Okay, perfect. Well, what happens if I throw a check in here? No, my opponent moves, and then we make a queen, a rook for a queen, and no, I can't do that. All right, so let's go here. And we're going to get the infamous Alekhine gun. That's when all your heavy hitters are in line like this. I think technically it's supposed to go rook, rook, queen. I think, but I'm not certain. Yep, good move by my opponent to handle the alignment issue. No. Not yet. We got to do this first. So now a rook here. Captures, 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 captures. At the end of the day, I end up... We just traded all this material for nothing. Okay, it's just a bunch of trades. We're dead even in material now, though. I mean, I have to make some breathing space for my king, but we'll do that here in a second. We're starting to get a little low on time, so we'll have to keep an eye on our clocks. So right now, my opponent, if I do the math on the square on the e7 square, I have 3 attacks. Aha. That was an easy snap for me because now it puts my opponent's queen on the defensive. The question is, where does the queen go? This comes with check. I'm not, well, no, I'm not threatening anything here. If my opponent were to be too silly and go this way, then yes, I am threatening. Oh, no, because this picks up with check. And that's checkmate. Yep. Notice, let's just back up one step. My opponent's king could have gone to either of these two squares, and it still defends this rook, right? By moving away from that square, oops, hello arrows. What's going on? Okay. By moving away from that square, he undefends that rook. And it just so happens that my rook is also defended. So rooks connected are super powerful. We know that the rooks being connected are super powerful. The bros for life. But yeah, keeping the rooks connected is super powerful. Alekhine's gun, Alyekin's gun, in a manner of speaking. And unfortunately, my opponent picked the one square that he should not have gone to. Either one of these other two squares, if we take a look at the analysis. No, king to h7 is also checkmate? Why? Because of that. Look at that. Okay, so that's also checkmate. Realistically, my opponent only had one square, so out of three, he had three chances, and he picked. He only had one correct one. So okay, not nearly as big of a blunder as I thought it might have been. I was thinking he could have picked either of the other two, but realistically, he could only pick one. And then my goal actually would have been to come here. Not here. No. I was trying to get along this, but I guess I can't with that rook there. Put some pressure on this pawn here. My opponent would have to defend. Yeah, and then now it allows me to infiltrate back rank. Okay. Keep the rooks connected. All right, anyway, let's go take a quick peek at the opening of this game. Let's see how it went. So, oops. So we started with d4, and my opponent with an e6. I don't know this opening. Horowitz. Yeah, this is one of the this setup here is one of these hyper moderns, where essentially all you do is you get your knight out. Let me see if I can do this. Get your knight out like this. Yeah, King's Indian Defense. Look at that, King's Indian Defense. So I knew it was one of the Indian games. So the idea here is that your long range pieces are controlling the center squares, right? So this knight is controlling these two squares. The bishop is controlling this diagonal. So minimal pawn movements to get maximum control of the center. So that's what kind of the Indian games develop into. And notice black is already ready to castle, and they were already influencing control of the center. So it's an interesting way to look at it. And they're called hypermodern because they sort of developed in the 1920s, I want to say. I don't know much about them, but if standard 400 years of chess philosophy has been to, control the center with your pawns, and then get your pieces into the action to back that up, that's 400 years of chess history. And then you get the last 100 years of this kind of, all right, I will allow you to control the center with the pawns because I'm going to control the center with my long-range pieces. And that's the debate, right? Classical chess versus hyper-modern chess, or modern versus hyper-modern, or I don't know all the names of it, but that's kind of the philosophy, the philosophical debate that's been raging now for the past 100 years about which is better. And it's funny because we still see that the classical systems, e4, d4, e4, pushing your pawns to the center real quick, we still see that is successful. So even with computer analysis and supercomputers and neural network training, we still see that the classical systems do have a ton of strength, even when facing these hyper-modern systems. Anyway, that's as much as I know of that whole debate. But anyway, this game took a very defensive turn. I do not know what my opponent plan is here. My opponent has a very high rating, so they obviously know what they're doing. They've played this before. I just continue to make standard developing moves. This early a4 was simply to prevent a b5. I have seen when I was studying the Slav games, the idea is you use this b5 push to eventually attack this knight and kind of lock down the whole queen side with this one pawn. And so an early a4 can stop that. And my opponent pushing his a6 pawn really led me to believe that he was probably looking for a b5. So in that case, I used my a4 pawn to stop that. That's the only plan I had there going into it. Otherwise, this is very standard developing stuff. I have no idea if this is a good move or not. In fact, the engine says that's a wasted turn, unnecessary. Yeah, the evaluation is just hovering here around zeros and ones. Not a whole lot between us. Finally getting around to develop my king side so I can get ready to castle. I probably could, well, I guess I did wait as long as I dared. My opponent was also ready to castle, so I just assumed that they were going to castle. And the fact that they didn't, that he manually is walking his king over, had me a little confused, because it does leave his rook along this outside h-file, so I really want to be cognizant of that. I really want to pay attention and make sure that we don't allow this rook to sneak down with possible queen backup, you know, something along those lines. I made a few what I call waiting moves here, moves where I just made a safe move over defending things and allow my opponent to make a move to see if we can find a way to break through here. Because you notice my opponent is so defensive that anything I do is going to be a mistake, pretty much. So I allowed my opponent to take the initiative, again, making as simple, safe moves as I can think of. And then my opponent finally looked for a break in the center, and okay, yeah, it says I could have gone ahead and moved my knight to d5 earlier than I did. But the capture is also a decent move, it says. Look at the engine, the capture is not a bad move. So the engine says white has a tiny advantage here. At our rating level, at my rating level, the way I play, I mean, you guys have seen how many times I've just flat out dropped a queen or dropped a rook or, you know, 5 or, you know, dropping 3 or 5 points one way or the other is way too easy for me. So I don't consider this much of an advantage. Now the pros would call this the difference between winning and losing. I'm not. I'm not that good. So the engine here says that it would prefer me to capture with my C pawn instead of the E pawn. I captured with the E pawn. Yeah, continuing to trade down here seems to be good because my opponent was so defensive that the only way to break through is to make these trades. So now that we have an opening up of a board, stuff can finally start to happen. Oops. Yeah. I just didn't want to slide this rook out yet, but I guess my queen is defending. Oh, that's right. I moved the queen. So the goal here was if my opponent, this pawn here, if I push, I did not want my opponent to be able to capture, and then I have to destroy my king side. So I wanted my queen to be able to defend. The engine wasn't in love with that. Oh, but the engine did like my next move. Good, 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 good. Huh. Yep, that was a good move. Excellent. And then getting a rook underneath was important. So the d7, it says it's not a fantastic move, but it's not horrible. But the idea here is I just wanted to see if my opponent would accidentally capture here, but they wouldn't. Most likely they're just going to slide a rook over, which they did. And now they do have 2 attackers, and I only have 1 defender. So I have to get another defender here. But I decided to go for this trade first, and wow, the engine hates that move. So I'm up a pawn, but I'm about to drop a pawn. So now we're back to a dead even game. So I did have a slight advantage, like almost a 3-point advantage here. Let me go back and figure out where we could have done this better. So we did that good. We did that okay. And then the engine says either A5 or Q to D2. I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing the super advantage I'm supposed to have. Ah, okay, okay. So now I see it. Now I see it. The danger is this connected passed pawn. So, wow. That was how many moves? 10 moves. The engine saw that we would have we'd have connected passed pawns in the center of the board that would at least pick up a rook, right? So your opponent has to give up this bishop in order to save a rook, because otherwise, once this pawn hits here, if your opponent captures, I capture, and then they can just swing up. They can swing over here and get defend that. Or if they don't capture and they just get out of the way, one of them's going to push, captures, captures, captures. I've traded 2 pawns for a rook. So yeah, I can see now what the engine was saying the advantage was getting a second pass pawn. There's no way I'm going to see 10 moves deep. I'm just not that good. So the engine was looking at this, saying, "Hey, figure out a way to destroy, get these guys out of the way, and then move your other pawn up." All right. But now we lose that advantage because that pass pawn is gone. Okay. All right. I can see it, engine. I would never have spotted that over the board. So, if that's what it takes to be like a pro, I'm never going to be there. Never. You guys saw how long I was struggling just to find one move, let alone a sequence of 10. So I want to look up the definition of Alekhine's gun. I don't remember if it's specifically... Where is my... I don't know where my phone is. I'd look it up right now. But yeah, unfortunately, I see what my opponent's trying to do, trying to get their rooks connected again, so that any infiltrations across the back row don't come with a threat, but that allows me to infiltrate anyway. Oh, sneaky, sneaky. Do you guys see the danger here? Do you guys see the danger here? Because of that. Let's say my opponent doesn't catch it and does something like this. Then that is a discovered check, and my opponent drops the queen. That's a sneaky move. I didn't see that. And you know what? Now that my opponent's got his rook off of the square, I could have just left my 2 rooks connected and moved my queen off. That would have been fine too. But this just seemed like a good way to infiltrate. I felt pretty strong about that. Throw in the free check. And now the engine's saying that I have an advantage now. Yeah, and unfortunately, my opponent just punted here right at the last second. Played a fantastic, such a defensive game right up until this last second. This fianchetto structure works so strongly when that bishop is in the center, but when that bishop is gone, you can see how blah, 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 blah. This diagonal opens up and I'm allowed to exploit it. I'm just playing the best moves for the engine. Oh, right. Haha, I have back rank issues. Aha, 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 aha. Right. Right. You have to pay attention to your back rank. You have to pay attention to your back rank. We do not want to throw these games, man. Ah, no, can't do that. No, that allows your opponent to really. Look at that. Okay. Now there are these long end lines. Okay. Anyway, guys, this was a fun game. It was really interesting to play. It was really interesting to play. I don't know. I'm not good at the whole facial expressions while I'm playing, so I don't know if you guys can see how my heart rate just when I'm playing these games live and I'm trying to find moves and I'm trying to spot things over the board. And my opponent really had this awesome turtle position that I could not break through. And so I just resorted to playing, instead of following my natural path, which is, you know what, let me just throw away a pawn and see if we can break stuff open. I forced myself to sit back and wait for my opponent to do something. Eventually, my impatience would win out, and I would sacrifice something to kickstart the game. But I got lucky that my opponent started the show for us, and we were able to get some kind of breakthrough and open up some lines. And then we had some kind of interesting development from there. So this was a fun game. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I will catch you next time. Bye.